As many of you know, the Resident Evil 8 DLC is coming up in just a few days, bringing us a third-person mode for the main campaign, additional content for the Mercenaries game mode, and an expansion to the story where we take on the perspective of Ethan's daughter, Rose. In this video, I will be reviewing the Resident Evil 8 DLC and giving my personal thoughts about it. So with that being said, let's get right into it. At the end of Resident Evil 8, we got to see Rose as a teenager, 16 years after the events of the game. This ending cutscene left fans with many questions about the future of Rose and what all she is capable of. Well, finally, after 1 year later, Capcom has released a DLC for Resident Evil 8 that delves into the many questions we had in regards to Rose. Growing up, Rose always struggled with her special powers and was always bullied by other children because of them. With a strong desire to rid her body of the powers, a scientist convinces Rose to enter the consciousness of the Megamycete to obtain a crystal that will remove her powers. When inside the consciousness of the Megamycete, Rose finds herself in a mysterious realm where memories of the past return to create a warped and twisted world of nightmares. This entails many new creepy enemy encounters, including an evil version of the Duke. The story of Shadow of Rose was quite the touching one. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I will say that this DLC was definitely a great conclusion to the Winter Saga. It gave us the final perspective we needed with Rose and really helped build a better connection with the Winters family to the player. Throughout the story, Rose will explore locations that were from Resident Evil 8's original story, but in this time around, certain paths will be blocked off with mold, making some areas somewhat linear. There was also a variety of different gameplay sequences that I don't want to talk too much about due to spoilers, but overall, this variety was easily able to keep me engaged by keeping the game enjoyable throughout. Shadows of Rose does not stray away from survival horror at all. The castle area has some pretty thrilling experiences in itself, but what's to follow after the castle definitely ups the ante. Once again, I really don't want to go too much into detail for obvious reasons, but I will say that there was an addition to a certain area that you will explore in Shadows of Rose that had me just as creeped out as the baby encounter from the main story of Resident Evil 8. That's pretty much all I want to say about that to avoid any spoilers. Shadows of Rose definitely has its fair share of horror, but it also doesn't lack too much in the combat either. Upon entering the realm, Rose is introduced to a being referred to as Michael that will guide Rose throughout the game by pointing her to the right path and supplying her with many different items like ammunition, health, and even a pistol. Because of this, the player is given plenty of resources to take out anything that gets in their way. In the game, Rose will be given access to a pistol, a shotgun, and pipe bombs to eliminate the enemy. Rose will also have access to her ice powers, which made a great addition to the combat. With her powers, she has the ability to halt enemies and drastically slow them down, allowing her to move past them free from harm. On the side of the screen, there will be a small gauge that shows the player the amount of uses Rose has left with her power. Every time Rose uses her powers, this gauge will deplete by 1, meaning you have to be somewhat cautious and conservative with her powers. You will start out with a total power of 2 and slowly find more flasks throughout the game that will enhance the power of the Megamycete, giving Rose extra uses with her power. In the game, you will find white herbs, which will be your only source to fill up the power gauge. Now, the base powers given to Rose are pretty fun to play around with, but unfortunately, you won't be able to reach the true potential of Rose's powers until the very end of the game, which is definitely a bummer as she is capable of some insane powers at her full potential. Now, outside of the combat, Rose also uses her powers to clear paths, which adds a nice puzzle aspect to the game. Speaking of puzzles, this DLC is filled with them. There were none that were crazy difficult, but there was definitely plenty of them to help change up the pace of the game at times. But going back to the combat, as many of you know, it will be played in the third person over the shoulder perspective, and because of this, it really gives the game similar vibes to the recent Resident Evil remakes that we have received, but it's not completely the same. Rose will run at a slightly lower pace than you are used to, and the weapons handling will be a little bit more shaky to adapt to Rose's inexperience. The resource management is also a little different. In this game, Rose gets the same treatment from Resident Evil 4 and 8, where she is just given a small little box that has plenty of storage to carry all that you need throughout the game. Shadows of Rose was a great addition to Resident Evil 8. With its added features like new areas to explore, new enemy encounters, additional combat features, and a vast array of puzzles, the DLC was really able to bring a fresh and a very enjoyable experience to the Resident Evil franchise. Not only that, but the story was very touching and made for a great conclusion to the Winter Saga. Because of this, I would say that this story makes the DLC worth it in itself, aside from the other two additions. Now moving on to the Mercenaries game mode, I think most people can agree when I say that this edition was much needed. I remember playing Mercenaries for the first time back when the game just came out, and I really wasn't having a great time with it compared to other Mercenaries game modes from prior Resident Evil games. There just wasn't that much of a variety given, which just made the game mode become dull very quickly. Now with this added content for Mercenaries, we will have 3 new characters to play with a ton of different abilities and mechanics to use. I got to try out playing as Chris Redfield and was honestly having a blast trying out all the new features we received. I haven't gotten the chance to unlock Heisenberg or Lady D yet, but I can guarantee you that they will be just as fun to play around with. Giving us the opportunity to play as enemies from the game will really help this Mercenaries mode stand out from others by giving us new means of combat aside from just guns. So yeah guys, there's not much else to say other than the fact that this will definitely be a great addition to the Mercenaries game mode. Next we have the third person game mode, which was heavily requested by many fans for obvious reasons. Giving us this third person mode is almost like playing a brand new game. I myself had a blast playing through this new experience for a little bit. The only thing that's kind of unfortunate is that all of the cutscenes will be played in a first person perspective in order to hide Ethan's face, which I really don't know why they are trying so hard to hide his face, especially since because of mods we already know what Ethan looks like. But it is what it is. The new experience is great regardless and is definitely worth a second playthrough of the game. And there you have it guys, that was pretty much all I had to say about the Resident Evil 8 DLC. I highly recommend checking it out because I truly had a blast going back to this game and playing through all of the new content, especially the Shadows of Rose story. But anyways guys, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.